Picture the last 2 minutes of a championship basketball game. You're completely exhausted, your lungs are burning, your legs feel like they're filled with wet cement, you've been running up and down the hardwood for nearly an hour.
Yeah, and then a loose ball takes a wild bounce your way.
Exactly. And in a fraction of a second, you need to instantly generate an explosive, maximum effort sprint.
Right, plus a massive vertical jump to secure that ball. It's the ultimate physiological contradiction.
Because you're asking the human body to perform an absolute maximum anaerobic power output, right?
A pure explosion of force. But it's doing this while it is already completely physically drained from sustained aerobic exertion.
You basically need the endurance of a marathon runner and the fast twitch power of an Olympic sprinter at the exact same time.
Exactly.
And that exact tension, how to train athletes to be both endurance monsters and explosive sprinters, is what researchers Kaiqin, Fang, and Jiang set out to solve in a brilliant 2024 study.
Which is why we're doing this.
Right. Welcome to today's deep dive. We're incredibly excited to have you with us for this one because we are exploring a really fascinating intersection of exercise physiology and gender science.
It's a great paper.
It really is. So our source material today is an academic article titled Gender-Specific Effects of Short Sprint Interval Training on Aerobic and Anaerobic Capacities in Basketball Players, a randomized controlled trial.
Quite a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. It comes to us from the Institute of Physical Education at Wuhan Sports University, and it was published in the highly respected Journal of Sports Science and Medicine.
And to truly appreciate why Fang and Jiang's research is so critical here, we first have to understand the sheer metabolic demand of a basketball game.
Right, it's a highly demanding intermittent sport.
Totally. The authors point out a staggering statistic, actually. Elite players cover between 4,500 to 5,000 meters in a single match.
Wow, so that is essentially running a 5K race.
Right, but instead of a steady jog, you're doing it in this chaotic sequence of sudden starts, hard stops, violent jumps, heavy physical contact.
So coaches face a massive logistical challenge when they're designing a training block.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they need conditioning methods that boost the aerobic cardiovascular system to handle that sustained 5,000-meter endurance.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, they have to supercharge the anaerobic system for those explosive, game-winning jumps.
And the catch is, they have to achieve both of these adaptations without causing so much systemic fatigue that the player's legs are just, too dead to actually practice their shooting and dribbling mechanics.
Exactly. You can't ruin the technical practice.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the paper proposes a very specific, almost counterintuitive solution to this training dilemma.
Yeah, the protocol known as short sprint interval training, or SSIT.
Okay, so if you've been near a gym in the last decade, you're probably familiar with HIT, right? High-intensity interval training.
Yeah, HIT is heavily marketed and highly effective for improving both aerobic and anaerobic fitness.
You go hard for 30 to 60 seconds, take a short rest, repeat.
Right, but traditional HII is grueling. It causes massive peripheral fatigue.
Okay, let's define peripheral fatigue for the listener, because that's a really crucial concept here. That is that heavy, burning, dead leg feeling, right?
Yes, exactly. So when you sprint for 30 to 60 seconds, your body relies heavily on a process called glycolysis for energy.
Okay.
And that produces a flood of metabolic byproducts like lactic acid in the muscles. That's peripheral fatigue.
Which ruins your muscle mechanics and requires a ton of recovery time.
Exactly. So what recent reviews in this specific Wuhan Sports University study focus on is a highly targeted variation, the SSIT.
Where the short is the operative word.
Right. We're talking about unbelievably brief windows of effort here.
Like how brief?
We are talking about bursts of just 4 to 10 seconds of all-out maximal effort.
Wow.
And the science shows that this incredibly short duration can lead to the exact same adaptive physiological changes as traditional longer-form interval training.
Wait, really? Just 4 to 10 seconds?
Yeah, but the mechanism is different. By keeping the sprint under 10 seconds, you primarily rely on the ATP-PC energy system.
Okay.
That's using stored energy in the muscles, which avoids dumping massive amounts of lactic acid into the system.
Ah, so the athletes don't get that profound peripheral fatigue.
Exactly. And frankly, they find it far less miserable than traditional HIIT.
It sounds like training a hybrid car, in a way.
How so?
Well, you have to optimize the electric battery for long-haul efficiency so you can cruise for miles without draining the system.
Right.
But you also have to optimize the gas engine for that sudden, aggressive highway acceleration.
That is a great way to put it.
But wait, I have to push back here. If this short sprint training is so great and we know it bypasses that terrible dead-leg fatigue, why is there a gap in the research? Like, what are we missing?
This raises an important question, and it's the exact question Fang and Jiang designed their entire study around.
Which is?
What happens when we look at this training protocol through the lens of biological sex? Because historically, sports science has a massive blind spot here. The impact of gender differences when designing these short sprint interval training programs has been almost completely overlooked.
Which seems wild given how much we know about human biology and how different the baseline physiological engines of men and women actually are.
Yeah, the baseline differences are undeniable. The study clearly lays out the scientifically acknowledged biological parameters.
Okay, so what are those?
Well, females naturally possess a distinct advantage in endurance situations.
Right.
Biologically, they utilize aerobic metabolism more efficiently, they process lipids differently, they experience lower fatigue during sustained submaximal efforts.
And their muscle tissues actually recover faster between bouts of exercise.
Yes, exactly. They are structurally and chemically optimized to endure.
Okay.
Conversely, males generally possess a larger physical frame, greater total muscle mass, and fundamentally different muscle morphology.
Which gives them a natural biological baseline advantage in generating absolute mechanical force.
Right, and achieving greater peak speeds during maximal intensity anaerobic performances. The chemical substrates they utilize for fast twitch energy are just deployed differently.
So if I'm a sports scientist looking at this, the logical assumption would be that because men and women have totally different physiological starting points, they would respond completely differently to the exact same high-intensity sprint protocol, right?
Is the assumption, yeah.
Like if you take a female athlete who biologically leans toward aerobic efficiency and a male athlete who biologically leans toward anaerobic absolute force and put them through the exact same 5-second sprint program.
Their bodies should adapt in fundamentally different ways.
Exactly.
And that is the core hypothesis of the entire paper. Can a standardized one-size-fits-all short sprint interval training program work equally well for elite male and female basketball players?
Because up until this clinical trial, the sports science community just didn't have the longitudinal sport-specific data to confidently answer that. So if you're the research team, how do you actually prove this? I mean, you can't just have a few athletes run some wind sprints and ask them how they feel on a survey.
No, definitely not.
You need a rigorous environment. You need a clean slate. How did they design the methodology?
They engineered a highly controlled, randomized trial. They recruited 40 national-level collegiate basketball players, 20 males and 20 females.
Okay, so these weren't weekend warriors.
No, they all had similar elite training backgrounds and at least 2 years of high-level competitive experience.
But what about that clean slate?
Right, the crucial variable. None of them had participated in any structured high-intensity interval training in the 3 months prior to the study.
Oh, perfect. They isolated the variable.
Exactly. So they divided these 40 athletes into 4 groups of 10. A male training group, a male control group, a female training group, and a female control group.
Okay.
For 6 solid weeks, the control groups just went about their business. They did their normal tactical and technical basketball practice.
Wait, the training groups?
The training groups had the new SSIT protocol bolted onto their routine before their regular practice began.
So if I'm an athlete assigned to that training group, what does my afternoon actually look like? Walk us through the physical protocol.
Okay, so you'd go through a standard dynamic warm-up.
Standard stuff, yeah.
And then you would face 3 sets of 10 repetitions of absolute all-out sprints.
Okay.
Each sprint lasts exactly 5 seconds. You get a 15-second pass of rest between each sprint.
So it's a 1-to-3 work-to-recovery ratio.
Exactly. After a set of 10 sprints, you rest for 3 minutes, and then you do the next set.
Wait, I have to admit, 5 seconds of sprinting and 15 seconds of rest repeated 10 times, on paper, that doesn't sound like a nightmare.
It doesn't.
But all out is the key phrase there, isn't it?
Maximum intent changes everything. If you are truly generating maximum force for 5 seconds, that 15-second rest feels incredibly short by the 5th repetition.
I can imagine.
They ran this protocol 3 days a week for 6 weeks. The entire sprint session only took about 20 minutes from start to finish.
Okay, so the athletes are putting in the work. But how do we quantify these aerobic and anaerobic gains objectively? How do you measure the unmeasurable?
The researchers subjected them to a punishing, highly specific testing gauntlet before the 6 weeks started, and then forced them through it again after the 6 weeks ended.
Okay, what kind of tests?
To measure raw muscular power, they tested vertical jump and peak power output.
Makes sense for basketball.
Yep. To measure agility and change of direction, which dictates everything in basketball, they used the T-test and the Illinois change of direction test.
Let's give a quick visual for you listening so you can picture the physical toll of this gauntlet. The T-test involves sprinting straight forward to a cone, dropping your hips to shuffle sideways left, then aggressively shuffling all the way right, shuffling back to the middle, and then rapidly backpedaling to the start.
Right. It traces a T and tests rapid deceleration and lateral power.
And the Illinois test is that classic lung-busting drill, where you are weaving in and out of a tight line of cones as fast as physically possible.
Exactly. It measures the ability to maintain speed while shifting your center of gravity.
Got it.
They also used a straightforward 20-meter sprint fired by electronic timing gates to measure pure, unadulterated speed.
Right.
But the real monster of the testing suite was reserved for aerobic power. They used the notoriously grueling yo-yo intermittent recovery test level 1.
Oh, wow. For those who haven't had the pleasure, the yo-yo test is a psychological and physical nightmare.
It really is.
It's essentially a 20-meter shuttle run dictated by an audio beep. You run 20 meters, turn and run back before the beep. Then you get a brief 10-second active recovery jog.
But the time between the beeps progressively gets shorter and shorter.
Right, you run back and forth faster and faster until you physically collapse or fail to beat the beep twice.
It is universally considered the gold standard for estimating a player's VO2 max.
Their maximum oxygen consumption.
Yes, in intermittent sports.
Cha.
Because it perfectly mimics the stop-and-start compounding exhaustion of a real game.
Okay, so we have the baseline physiological numbers, we have the 6 weeks of grueling 20-minute sprint intervals, and then we put them through the gauntlet again.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the findings pulled from this data completely challenge those initial biological assumptions we talked about.
They really do. The data revealed that both the male and the female training groups saw significant improvements across the board compared to their respective control groups.
Wow.
And I mean, statistically profound improvements. The effect sizes were massive.
Let's contextualize those effect sizes, because in sports science, an effect size over 0.8 is considered a large adaptation.
Right.
And anything over 1.3 is considered very large.
So when looking at the brutal yo-yo intermittent recovery test, the effect size for the female training group was 2.18.
That is huge.
And for the male training group, it was 2.20.
That is an astronomical improvement in aerobic capacity from a protocol that only involves sprinting for 5 seconds at a time.
Right. Their estimated VO2 max improved significantly in parallel.
Amazing.
And on the anaerobic side, they saw huge, explosive jumps in their vertical leap and peak power output.
Did the numbers match up there too?
Yeah, the female group yielded an effect size of 1.29 on their vertical jump, and the male group was right there alongside them at 1.06.
But the true revelation of the paper, the absolute center of the bullseye for what Fang and Jiang were trying to figure out, is the direct comparison between the sexes.
Exactly.
When they ran the statistical models comparing the men's adaptations directly against the women's adaptations, gender did not exhibit any significant impact on the extent of the improvements.
Let that sink in for a moment. Despite the well-documented baseline biological differences, females being naturally more aerobically efficient, males having more natural muscle mass for absolute force generation, both groups responded to this specific 5-second interval protocol in almost the exact same way.
That is incredible.
They experienced nearly identical trajectories of improvement in vertical jump, in peak power, in speed, and in change of direction.
Wow.
What's fascinating here is that it wasn't just the physical, measurable outcomes that were identical. The researchers were incredibly thorough. They also measured the psychological and internal load.
Okay.
They tracked the rate of perceived exertion, or RPE, and a metric called the training impulse, known as TRIMP.
Okay, you need to break TRIMP down for me, because I understand rate of perceived exertion. That's just asking an athlete, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard was that?
Right.
But how does a coach use TRIMP, and why does it matter here?
Well, TRIMP is a brilliant metric because it bridges the gap between what the coach prescribes and what the athlete's body actually experiences.
Okay, so how is it calculated?
It's essentially a calculation of the session's duration multiplied by the athlete's heart rate, or perceived exertion.
Mm.
So two athletes might run the same sprint, but one might have a massive heart rate spike while the other barely breaks a sweat.
So TREMP quantifies the internal physiological cost of the workout.
Exactly. Coaches use it to prevent overtraining and burnout.
Ah.
And the data here showed that both the RPE and the TREMP were statistically similar between the men and the women throughout the entire 18 training sessions.
So the subjective experience of the suffering was identical.
Yes.
They both felt the exact same level of exhaustion, their internal physiological cost was the same, and their bodies adapted by improving to the exact same degree.
Exactly right.
So what does this all mean?
It means we have to look closely at the underlying physiological mechanics. It's not just enough for us to know that it worked.
Right.
To actually utilize this, we need to understand why the body adapts this way when pushed for 5 seconds.
Wait, I have to stop you there. This is the part I'm really struggling with. How on earth does running for literally 5 seconds help me survive a 45-minute basketball game or drastically improve my yo-yo test score?
It does sound counterintuitive.
It sounds too good to be true. Where's the aerobic demand coming from? I mean, I'm barely breathing after 5 seconds.
It's all about the accumulation of stress and the work-to-rest ratio. Let's break down the aerobic why first.
Okay.
It comes down to how this specific protocol impacts both the central and peripheral components of your cardiovascular fitness.
Central and peripheral, okay.
Right. The central component is your heart and lungs functioning as a pump to deliver oxygenated blood. The peripheral component is your actual muscle tissues extracting and utilizing that oxygen.
So the central system is the delivery truck, and the peripheral system is the factory workers unpacking the boxes.
That is an excellent analogy. Even though the sprint itself is only 5 seconds, you're doing 30 of them in a session with very short 15-second rest periods.
Yeah.
That 15 seconds is nowhere near enough time for your heart rate to drop back to baseline.
Ah, I see.
So your central system, the delivery truck, is working furiously, keeping your heart rate elevated significantly throughout the entire 20-minute session.
To constantly shuttle oxygen to the muscles during those tiny rest windows.
Exactly.
Because your body is trying desperately to clear metabolites and restore that ATP-PC energy we talked about before the next beep hits.
Precisely. And on the peripheral side, the factory workers, the muscles, are forced to become hyper-efficient at utilizing whatever oxygen they receive to recover in just 15 seconds.
Wow.
The study's results indicate that this specific combination of extreme exertion and very short rest yields comparable, massive improvements in both central oxygen delivery and peripheral oxygen utilization.
And again, this cardiovascular adaptation occurs completely independent of the athlete's baseline gender differences.
Exactly.
That covers the massive improvement in the yo-yo test. But what about the anaerobic side? The explosive jumping and sprinting.
Well, the improvements in agility, vertical jump, and the 20-meter sprint are primarily due to neuromuscular adaptations.
Okay, how so?
When you are doing an all-out, maximum intent 5-second sprint, your leg muscles are forced into extremely rapid transitions between eccentric and concentric actions.
Let's visualize that mechanism for a second. An eccentric muscle action is when the muscle is lengthening under tension to absorb force. Like, think about landing from a heavy box jump. Your quad is stretching like a rubber band to absorb the impact.
Right.
And a concentric action is the muscle actively shortening, like when you explode back up off the ground.
Exactly. In a maximum sprint, your foot is striking the hardwood and pushing off incredibly fast. You are reducing your ground contact time to an absolute minimum.
Okay.
This violent, rapid, eccentric to concentric transition acts a lot like intense plyometric jump training.
Oh, interesting.
It improves intermuscular coordination. It physically alters the mechanical stiffness of your muscle tendons, making them act like tighter springs.
Well-
And crucially, it ramps up the firing rate of your alpha motor neurons.
So we aren't necessarily building bigger muscles here. We aren't upgrading the hardware.
Right.
By sprinting for just 5 seconds with absolute maximum intent, we are upgrading the software.
That's exactly it.
We are literally rewiring the nervous system's connection to the muscles, telling those alpha motor neurons to recruit fast-twitch muscle fibers faster and harder.
Yes. And because you stop at 5 seconds, you don't build up that massive lactic acid peripheral fatigue that ruins your running mechanics.
Ah, so you get pure, high-quality neuromuscular repetitions.
Exactly. And that software upgrade happens universally, regardless of whether you possess male or female hardware. The nervous system responds to the acute stimulus of the short, maximum effort sprint in the exact same way.
It is incredibly empowering information.
It really is.
If you're a coach listening to this or an athlete designing your own off-season program, the application is incredibly straightforward.
Oh, completely.
You don't need to overcomplicate things with complex, gender-specific conditioning spreadsheets for your interval training.
Nope.
You can program the exact same volume, the same intensity, and the same frequency for your male and female athletes and expect the same fantastic physiological upgrades across the board.
Right.
You get the explosive power to grab that rebound in the final seconds and the aerobic tank to actually run the fast break afterward.
It truly is a game changer for athletic programming. And it leaves us with a broader, almost philosophical question when we step back and look at the data.
Oh.
Yeah. If 6 weeks of intense 5-second sprint intervals can effectively strip away the expected gender disparities in training adaptation, it makes you wonder.
Wonder what?
At the highest levels of elite sport, does the physiological response to an extreme, highly specific stimulus eventually converge?
Wow. Does the pure intensity of the training override our baseline biological differences to create a unified athletic response?
That's the question.
That is a phenomenal thought to leave on. The great equalizer of maximum effort. If you are intrigued by the dense physiological mechanics we've discussed today, I highly encourage you to seek out the full article by Kaiqin, Fang, and Jiang in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine.
Highly recommend it.
Diving into their exact statistical breakdowns, examining the effect size charts, and reading through their methodology is incredibly rewarding for anyone passionate about human performance.
The level of detail in their research provides a fantastic, evidence-based blueprint for any serious athlete or coach looking to optimize their time on the court.
We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Make sure to follow the channel and turn on your notifications so you don't miss our next exploration into scientifically rigorous, game-changing research. Until next time, remember the exhaustion of that last 2 minutes of the game and train